Hello, everyone, and welcome to this CASAS webinar on the new Reading Goals Test Series. My name is Linda Taylor. I'm the Director of Assessment Development at CASAS, and very glad to have you on this call today. I'm sure there are many of you who are quite familiar with CASAS, and then I imagine there are also many of you on the call who may be somewhat unfamiliar or possibly completely unfamiliar with CASAS. So I'm going to, in the beginning and here and there through the session, I'm going to present some CASAS basics, but if you need more clarification on anything, of course, you can contact us afterwards and we'll try and fill in the gaps. So we'll be on for an hour today, and if you have any questions, I've had to mute everyone because of the large number of people that are expected. But if you have a question, please post it in the chat box, and I will check it periodically to see if I can answer the questions. And if there are questions I cannot answer, if they're too technical, perhaps about e-tests or the TOPS Pro software, I'll let you know and we'll get back to you. So let's get started with, here's the agenda for today. A brief CASAS overview. I'm going to review the CASAS tests that are currently NRS approved. Then we're going to do an overview of this new Reading Goals test series. Then look in more detail at the content of the test series, looking at the test blueprint and the sample test items, and then show you where, we probably won't have time to go over them, but show you where, in fact, all of these resources are on our CASAS website. I'll show you where to find them, including the FAQs. And then throughout and at the end, there'll be a chance to ask questions. And as I mentioned in the chat box, the PowerPoint for this session is already posted on the CASAS website. And we are recording the session, so if others of your colleagues weren't able to attend today, they would be able to listen to a recording. That'll hopefully be posted later this week. And then they'll have access to it. All right, let me begin by saying that you may not realize that CASAS is a nonprofit organization. We've been around for quite a while. We're here to stay. We're small, but we've been here since 1980, and we develop basic skills assessments for adult education programs. We have a very far reach and consider ourselves to be a national leader in the field of adult basic education and adult ESL assessment. We've had tests approved by the U.S. Department of Ed since we began early in the 1980s, and we currently have tests that are approved for NRS reporting for both ABE and ESL for the NRS system. We're used in some states exclusively, in some states we're on the menu, in some states we're used in certain types of programs only. But in 35 states, and also internationally, we have a very large program in Singapore and in some other countries around the world. We have something called a CASAS National Consortium, where we take the advice and we have an opportunity to meet with adult education leaders, really, at the state level. They may be state directors, they may be CASAS certified trainers. And they come together with us in San Diego every year in June, coming up soon. And they help us determine our priorities for development. They help us with field testing and generally advise us on various matters in adult education. We do have technical manuals available for all of our tests, and if you'd like them, just let us know. We can send them to you in electronic form. So the CASAS system, we like to call it an integrated system approach. And if you look on the left side, you'll see there are 4 major areas of focus: curriculum, assessment, instruction, and accountability. And we do believe that these all should be interacting and aligned in order to have a good assessment system. We have had since the very beginning something called CASAS competencies, which we've updated over the years. And these reflect the kinds of literacy skills that students need, adult learners need to be able to do in their daily lives, whether in work, related to health and consumer economics, and in other ways. We also have something called Basic Skills Content Standards, and in the areas of reading, listening, and math, and those are the same areas that we have our approved assessments. And our tests that are approved for NRS are all multiple choice tests. We do have performance assessments, but they're not approved for NRS reporting. I'll be talking throughout the session today and really want to emphasize that our computer-delivered CASAS e-tests are really worth considering if you're not already using them. We all have all of our NRS approved tests also available on paper or CDs for listening. But there are some advances where the e-testing has become more affordable, more mobile, more practical in terms of being able to deliver them on Chromebooks and also soon on iPads. We're in a soft launch of the iPad delivery. So that's something to consider if you weren't aware of that already. We have something called Quick Search Online, which is a database of instructional materials. All the publishers contact us and work with us to code their materials to the CASAS competencies and content standards and to the test. So we don't have any curriculum materials of our own, but we do maintain this online database, which is free. And if you go on the CASAS website, you'll be able to access it and see how the available materials, whether they're in print or software, relate to the CASAS test. We have our software system is called TOPS Pro Enterprise, and it does a number of things, including automatically scoring the tests and producing quite a lot of different reports at the student, class, and agency levels. And in the PowerPoint, there's a whole section on the reports, which I'm not going to be able to get to today, but it is included in case you'd like to see more about that. So we do measure academic skills, and but in the context of common life and work scenarios, we take it very seriously that in this case of the reading series, that the reading passages should be on topics that are relevant and interesting to adult learners. You can give these tests either to groups or to individuals, so it's very practical. As I mentioned, the e-test has a lot of benefits, and in many ways can improve the quality of the assessment in terms of how a test taker interacts with the test. They're able to self-advance at their own pace. The interface is very intuitive, and in many ways it gives a better, easier form selection, more accurate form selection than if you're doing it on paper. Staff time is very much reduced in terms of all the answer sheets and bubbling, and it's now become very affordable with the ability to give it on Chromebooks and soon iPads. If you need to use paper, actually it's important to know that if you need to use paper, you can do it at one site or a few sites, but you can mix the paper and the e-testing. Even from, let's say you could pre-test on paper and post-test with e-test, because we've done studies to show that they are interchangeable. The reading tests, this is something unique to CASAS, is that our reading tests are designed to be used for both ABE and ESL learners. Now, instruction for those learners will differ, but we believe that the outcome in terms of how you measure their reading ability is the same. So I'll be telling you a little bit more about that in terms of our current reading series. Training is required in order to order CASAS tests, but it is free, and there are online modules that you can do anytime that are free on all the introduction to CASAS, what we call initial training, as well as all the requirements for getting onto e-tests. So important to understand that sometimes people have heard different things about our training costs, but really there are ways to do training in person, and that may cost money, but you can take a free option to get started with CASAS and keep going. Sample test items are also free and available on our CASAS website, which you can use to familiarize teachers or students with the types of items that they'll be encountering. So I want to be very clear about which CASAS tests are approved for NRS reporting right now, and have broken them into tests for ABE and ASE and tests for ESL. So for ABE and adult secondary, it is possible now to use this newly approved CASAS Reading Goals series. We have the full 7-year approval through 2025, and but it's important to understand that they can only be used now, only approved for ABE and ASE. So right now you could start using them for your ABE and ASE students. The reason that, as I said earlier, we have the same series for ABE and ASE, but currently we're in a transition period where because the descriptors, the NRS educational functioning level descriptors came out first for ABE and ASE, as well as the college and career readiness standards, we were able to develop this new series aligned to the college and career readiness series standards, for ABE, but we have had to wait until the NRS EFLs for ESL came out, which just happened last December, and now we are in the process of submitting the same test, this Reading Goals test series, for NRS review. This October we'll be submitting it. It'll be the same test that we are proposing to also be approved for ESL. So currently, in an ABE program, you can use that Reading Goals test. Actually, there's another reading test, the current Life and Work Reading Series, 80 series, that is approved through June of 2019. And if you choose, you could keep using that through this year, as well as the beginning literacy forms, and probably for another year after that, because normally U.S. Department of Ed Octay has allowed what they call a sunset year, 1 year beyond the end of the approval period. So it's very likely that you would be able to use these tests that are approved through June of 2019 for yet another year. So with ABE-ASE, you could use the Reading Goals series. You could also continue to use Life and Work Reading, and then later transition to the Reading Goals series. And as far as math is concerned, you would need to use the Life Skills Math 30 series. And for the advanced level D, if you like, it's more academic, you can use the secondary math, which is also NRS approved. It's forms 505 and 506. So those are the possibilities for ABE and ASE programs right now. And for ESL, we have these tests that are approved through 2019, the same Life and Work Reading series and Beginning Literacy, as well as the 980 Listening series. So as I mentioned, the Reading Goals series is approved through 2025 for ABE and ASE. For ESL, we'll be submitting that the same test to use in ESL programs this coming October. For math, we have submitted the Math Goals series just recently in April, and we don't know exactly when we will hear. Sometimes it's taken as much as 8 months to a year to hear back, but it's possible we can hear sooner. So as soon as we do hear, we'll let you know so that you'd be able to also use the Math Goals series as soon as possible. The Listening Goals series is in development, and we plan to submit that in October of 2020. All of these goals series are strongly aligned with the college and career readiness standards for adult education. And we're going to look at that in more detail, but generally in terms of reading, that means that they assess higher order thinking skills, including depth of knowledge, complex text that's informational rather than literary, and academic vocabulary and other language. And for math, also aligned to the college and career readiness standards for math, but we have the additional challenge of making sure that these the test items are relevant and can be applied in our adult learners' daily lives or work. So for those of you familiar with CASAS, this is a familiar chart. But if you're not, I just wanted to show that this is the current situation as far as the ABE is concerned. The CASAS scale begins very low with low literacy, at beginning literacy at around 150, and ranges all the way up to beyond 246. These are scale scores, and the ranges are the ones that relate to the NRS level, reporting levels. So there's beginning literacy, there's beginning basic skills, then intermediate, advanced basic skills, adult secondary, and advanced adult secondary. So, and there are level descriptors for all of these levels. The next slide shows the new score ranges for the Reading Goals series, and I put them up right against these current score ranges for the Life and Work Reading series for ABE and ASE, so that you can easily compare them. The way that we came to these new ranges is that, and this is what we do for all of our new series, we convene a panel of what we call subject matter experts from all over the country, and those are adult education practitioners who are familiar with ABE and ASE learners and have quite a lot of experience and have used and are familiar with the college and career readiness standards. And we provide them with what's called an ordered item test booklet. It's a set of items, test items from the Reading Goals series, going from beginning level all the way up to advanced. And their task is to look at the NRS educational functioning level descriptors and look at the items that are ordered, as I said, from easy to hard, according to how they were field tested. So there's empirical basis for this. And then decide they do it independently, they discuss, and finally we look at the results altogether to see where the cut points should be placed. And they're placing multiple cut points along that range of difficulty. So not unexpectedly, the cut points and the ranges are a bit higher for this new series because it is more academic, more rigorous, and we would expect that to be the case, that the scale now still stays the same as far as how well a student can read along the scale, but in terms of the new standards and the new NRS descriptors, they do require more of our learners, and so the levels describe more challenging skills, so they are pushed up a little bit. So the first level, beginning ABE literacy, formerly was 200 and below on the CASAS scale, and now is 203 and below. So in other words, a student who was progressing through beginning ABE literacy, and before, when they got to 201, would be moved into beginning basic ed, currently they have to get up to 204 in order to do that. So they're going to be staying a little bit longer, perhaps, in that beginning ABE literacy level. We would not recommend that you move them down. I mean, well, there's nowhere further down to go in this case, but in terms of the other levels, keep them where they are, and just be aware and help them be aware that that it might take them a little bit longer to complete the level. So you can see how 204 instead of 201 and goes up to 216 instead of 210. So that's a pretty significant jump up to 216. So it takes, in order to get into low intermediate, and this is where the biggest change really is, right here in the middle. In order to get into low intermediate, instead of 211, you have to be at 217. But one of the nice things I think you'll see about the new score ranges is that they are here in 10-point increments. So whereas before the high intermediate basic ed was a 15-point range, and that was sometimes challenging for students to get through, now this range goes, it's more evened out. So although they have to start higher, 217 to 227, because of the shorter range, here at high intermediate they get up to 238, which is just a little bit above where it was before, and 239 to get into level 5. and then 249 and above to get into high adult secondary. So this is levels 5 and 6 is where they're getting into high school equivalency preparation classes or preparation for whatever they're moving on to, whether it's a training program or work. But this is considered to be high school level here. All right, let me see if there are any questions before I go on. Looks like, will the ESL reading goals be the same? So we, the tests will be the same test levels and test items, but the scale score ranges, we convened a different group of subject matter experts who are ESL specialists for the ESL, and we are submitting that. I can't tell you exactly what it's going to be because we haven't gotten the approval for it yet, but I can say, though, that they're not exactly the same, but they are similar. So, which they should be. I mean, because that sort of confirms our principle that for both groups, the skills that are described are similar for both ESL and ABE. So similar, but not exactly the same. Any other questions? Okay. We are currently conducting studies with both the GED testing service and ETS that has the HiSET, these high school equivalency tests. And when those studies are concluded, we're more than halfway there. We will be able to tell you the CASAS reading and also eventually the math scale score at which a learner is likely to be able to pass these tests. So that's coming soon, and if you would like to be part of this study, please let us know. We'll be able to finish them more quickly if we get more people to participate. So, but please know that that is coming soon. And we've not been able to do a study with the task, though we would like to. Okay, a big question out there seems to be about test timing, and so I want to go into this in a little bit of depth and try to make it clear to everyone. So at the time of the intake, there are two ways to determine the appropriate pretest for a student to take. And if you're using the CASAS e-test, computer-delivered assessments, there's the possibility of using a short locator that is 10 to 15 minutes, average about 10. And what happens is that the computer automatically scores that behind the scenes, and then the student is automatically, based on their score on that locator, placed into the appropriate pretest level. So you don't have to stop and score or think about which pretest form to give. So, and it's a seamless process. The appraisal also serves the function of placing a student into the appropriate pretest. It's longer, 30 minutes, 28 items. It's available in e-test as well as paper. And actually, just to note that if you are not required, if you're not doing NRS reporting, there are some situations where it's not necessary, then you can use the appraisal to get a general sense of the English ability, the reading ability of or math ability of a student or a client in many cases. So, but it's important to understand that that cannot be used, the appraisal alone cannot be used for NRS reporting. But it is a tool that's very important to get the student into the right pretest so that you can get the best, most accurate measure of the student's ability by having them in the correct pretest form. There are 4 CASAS levels. A is the lowest, B, C, D is the highest. And if they take the correct form for their level, then they can have a better chance of demonstrating their ability. So the appraisal is something you would need to use if you're using paper testing, and it takes 30 minutes. You have to score it and then use a chart to determine the appropriate pretest. And the pre and post tests for the new Reading Goals series for ABE, ASE. For level A, it's 60 minutes for the 2 parallel forms. Of course, they only have to take one of them at a time. So at pretest time, they would take one 60-minute form. And then for the levels B through D, there's 75 minutes. Now, what that means is that you must allow or schedule 75 minutes because that's how much time, in order to be fair and allow the student to demonstrate their ability, that's how much time you need to allow. Now, many students will finish much sooner than that, 50 minutes, 60 minutes, most will not take 75 minutes actually. But we did our research to find out how long at least 90% of the students would take to finish the test, and that was 75 minutes. So that's, to be equitable, what you need to allow. Now, as far as our other approved test series, whether it's the Life Skills Math or the Secondary Math for ABE, ASE, or for the Life and Work Reading for ESL actually, or ABE, or the Life and Work Listening for ESL, those are currently 60 minutes, and they remain 60 minutes. They're, as I mentioned earlier, approved through June of 2019, and maybe can be a year. So 60 minutes for those. But if you start using the new Reading Goals series, you do, by the way, need to pre-test and post-test series. So you might want to continue post-testing. If you're currently using the Life and Work Reading series for ABE, you'd want to post-test those students with the Life and Work Reading while you can, still now, that's still approved, and then begin using the new Reading Goals series for ABE with your new students. And you might then decide on a certain time when you're going to transition all your whole program over to the new Reading Goals. But you know, that's something that is important to be aware of what your state is asking you to do in this regard, because different states will have different policies about when they want you to begin using this new Reading Goals series. Some are starting now, some are allowing programs to, or asking programs to start in July, or giving them the option of waiting another year. So, and then as far as post-testing is concerned, that hasn't changed, still 70 to 100 hours recommended, but no less than 40 hours. So there's a question about where this is on the website. I'm going to show you in just a minute. All right, so let's I want to make sure before I go on, are there any questions about the timing? Okay, let me go on now to the content. So, as I mentioned earlier, this series is also based on the CASAS competencies, as always. But and I will say that the current series, the Life and Work Reading series, was pretty much equally developed. The development was equally based on the CASAS competencies and the content standards. We have CASAS content standards. But the new Reading Goals series, I would say one of the main differences is that the test items are primarily focused on the college and career readiness reading standards in the areas of reading and reading foundation. So that is what the test items are primarily targeting, is these standards. And however, they are in the context of the CASAS competencies. So they're still in the areas of health, employment, in fact, a little more employment than in the last series because of WIOA, consumer economics, community resources. All those areas are the context for the reading passages, but the questions and what the task reading skills that are being measured are more focused on the content standards. We still have what we call reading task areas, which shows the format of the reading passage. So those are still there, whether it's a form, the form that you fill out, it could be area 1, whether it's a chart or a table, that's task area 2, whether it's text, which is task area 3, another kind of format like a sign or an ad or label, which is 4. And then another aspect of the development was the depth of knowledge, and that is the cognitive complexity of the items. I'm going to talk about that, and that's really inherent in the college and career readiness standards, but it's something that we made sure to focus on and have enough depth of knowledge, especially at the higher levels. So here we have a chart that shows 3 major categories of content in the new CASAS Reading Goals series. And on the right side, you can see the CCRS Reading Anchor Standard that these relate to. So another thing that is actually quite different about the new Reading Goals series is that we are measuring vocabulary per se. Now, it is still in the context of a reading passage. It's not just an isolated vocabulary question. But in terms of, it relates to R4, and on all of the test forms, there's 20 to 25% of the items that are targeting vocabulary. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute when I show you some items. Then the two other categories are reading comprehension skills. But the first one is related to R1 and R2 in the CCRS. And they have skills like locate information in detail and cite evidence from the text, as well as identifying the main idea and related details. One thing about this category is that all of these items are at DOK1, that is just recalling or finding detailed information. Whereas the second category here, well, the third category, but the other one on reading skills, relates to higher order thinking skills, DOK 2 and 3, and measures these CCR standards. Now, R1 and R2 at the higher levels looks at things like inference, draw conclusions, and summarizing, text structure and features, R5, the author's purpose and point of view, R6, and then analyzing claims and arguments, which is R8. So now something like this is not going to appear on level A, and I'll show you in a minute how these categories play out through the levels. One thing to see is that these three standards, R7, R9, and R10, are not included here as primary targets of the items, but they are measured. R7 is looking at the format generally of an item, R9 at looking at answering using more than one text, and R10 looks at the text complexity and fluency of the item. So these are measured across the content areas above here. Any questions? Yes. So now here's if you're not familiar with depth of knowledge, then this is the framework. Whereas when I say DOK1, I'm talking about items that are not very demanding at all in terms of their cognitive complexity, just asking for recall, reproduction, and recitation. They could be difficult in terms of reading and vocabulary, but they are not difficult in terms of the cognitive processing that's required to answer them. And then, as I mentioned, we have DOK 2 and 3 that are measured in our category called higher order reading skills. You can look this up on the web if you're not familiar with this DOK, and I encourage you to do so. Okay, another thing I want to point out is the academic word list, which was something developed by a woman named Averill Coxhead from New Zealand. You know, there are so many possible academic words. There is something called the General Service List that has 2,000 of the most common English words, but we, and actually even in academic texts, but we saw that the field of adult ed seemed to be trending towards this academic word list, and it is a somewhat limited list. It's still a lot, 570 word families, but they are listed in order of frequency based on the research that was done in New Zealand. So when we are testing an academic vocabulary word, we did make sure that that word appeared as a word family, maybe not exactly on the list, but in the word family related to one of those words on the list. And that we thought would be a little bit helpful in terms of targeting and choosing vocabulary to teach for instruction. You can get this list online. We particularly appreciate the alphabetized version. It's easier to use. So that's a way to give you some guidance for the kinds of vocabulary that we're going to be targeting in the series. Now, I want to just tell you a little bit about the item types and the features that we used in this new goal series in order to be aligned to the college and career readiness standards and have academic and rigorous content. So in terms of the question types, we're still multiple choice, and until something changes where everyone in the field of adult ed can use computer-delivered testing, we probably have to stick with multiple choice, which is a bit limiting, but that's the situation. So we had to stay with all multiple choice questions in order to be able to assure you that the results with the paper and the computer testing are equally are the same. But instead of, in this new series, just having what we call comprehension questions where the question ends in a question mark, we added another variation on that, which is sentence completion, where the test question, so to speak, ends in a blank, and then the answer options would complete the sentence. And what that does is it allows us to word the question more simply sometimes, and you can get a little bit convoluted and unnecessarily complex if you have to create a test question that ends in a question mark. So this allowed us to more scope to work with in terms of writing the test items and specifically the test questions. We have now numbered lines in the text passages, and that helps to ask the student to cite evidence from the text by asking which line or lines the answer would appear in, rather than asking them to choose a particular answer. And also in terms of the vocabulary questions, those targeted vocabulary words are underlined in the passage and also in the test question. In Level A, in this new series, we have photo prompts instead of line drawings, and that's about the first third of the Level A test forms. And I will also mention that we have not yet developed a beginning literacy level for this series per se, but the first part of Level A goes lower than before, and we hope will be adequate for the low literate students to be able to get an accurate score, scale score. Now, another feature of this new test series, and it's something that occurred to some extent in the previous series, is in terms of having what we call item families, where for a set of items, which is a reading passage and the related test items, we have, especially at the higher levels, tried to have 2, 3, and up to 5 items in a set. At the lower levels, Level A, sometimes it's just one item because it's a very simple prompt, or Level B also 1 or 2, but sometimes 3 or 4. And the reason that it was important to have multiple items related to a single reading passage is in order to be able to achieve the 75-minute time limit, because we knew that adult ed programs are constrained by time, and you have students for so little time as it is. You don't want to spend too much time testing. It needs to be adequate to be fair and valid and reliable. But when we now, with our computer-delivered testing, we can look in the back end at how long it takes, the timing for a student when they take the test. And it's fascinating. It's very clear to see that when a student is taking the test, the longest time is when they're reading the passage. And then, so the first item in every set of items related to a passage takes the longest because they have to read the passage and answer the item. And after that, the next items in the set don't take as long because they've already read the passage or parts of the passage. So, and one of the features in eTest that's new for this series is at the top of the screen, the student is advised about how many items are in the set and which item they're on. So let's say if it's a set of 4 questions, it will say 1 of 4, and they'll go to the next item, it's 2 of 4, and so on. So that gives them an understanding that it's worth their while to dig into the passage and because there are going to be a number of items related to it. And that's actually one of the principles of the college and career readiness standards, is to really work with the text and in order to understand it. All right. So our sample test items, as always, are free and up on the CASAS website. And you can use them to show students and get them familiar with the test. You can use them with teachers so they have a sense of what's going on with how the tests are developed. All right, so now let me see if there are any questions. I don't think so. I'm going to go onto the CASAS website and show you exactly how to find these things yourself. Sorry. Okay. All right. We're going to start on the CASAS webpage. So when you open the CASAS website, this is what you see. And so the first, we have a page devoted to the Reading Goals series. And to get there, go to Product Overviews. And actually, here's the CASAS catalog. But then click on Assessments. And then on Reading Goals. All right, so on this page, I'm going to make it a little bigger. Okay. This is the first listing here. The first PDF is the PowerPoint that I've just been working with you on. And there's also a shorter PowerPoint PDF that has an overview of the Reading Goals series, the FAQs that I mentioned, and the test blueprint, which we're going to look at in just a minute. I see there's a question. Maybe someone came on a little later, but no, this new Reading Goals series is currently approved for ABE and ASE, and we are submitting it in October so that it can also be used by ESL students, but it is currently not approved for ESL students. And that's why, in the meantime, you need to keep using the Life and Work Reading Series. Okay, now just to let you know all the things on this Reading Goals page, in addition to those items, there is the link to the sample test items. We're going to look at those in a minute. There's also a chart that shows all the test levels. You can see that for level A, forms 901 and 902, this is the 900 series. There are 39 test questions. And then they're 60 minutes each. Then levels B, C, and D are 40 items, and they're 75 minutes. Okay. Now, actually, also, we have the links here to the CASAS competencies and the CASAS content standards. So that's also useful to you, and to quick search online. So from this page, you can get to a lot of places that you need to go. All right, now let's look at the test blueprint. Actually, I'm going to open it. All right. So what this does is give you an overview of the content for each of the test levels. And here you can see for level A, the high-level view is that 25% of the test items address vocabulary, in this case, high-frequency vocabulary for level A. And 75% of the test focuses on the reading comprehension skills, that DOK1 category, and none of it at level A is the higher order reading skills. So that's basically the story for level A. Level B, you can see it changes where slightly less vocabulary, 20% though. Half of the test is the DOK1 reading comprehension skills, and 30%, even at level B, is the higher order reading skills. And for vocabulary, we have some high frequency, also a little bit of academic vocabulary and meaning from context. And at level B, we have mostly information and detail, but also some main idea. And then in terms of the higher order reading skills, 30% of the test is that content, where it's cite evidence, inferring, drawing conclusions, summarizing, text structure and features, and the author's point of view or purpose. When we get to level C, I'll make it a little bigger, still 20% vocabulary, and here we get to half and half of the items, the remaining items in reading comprehension skills, the other half in higher order skills. And in vocabulary, we can see that about half of the items are academic vocabulary, and the others are what we call meaning from context, where they can use the surrounding context to understand. It includes figurative language and other kinds of metaphors, similes, etc. Then the reading comprehension skills, again, locate information and main idea. And then at level C, these same areas, but in greater proportion compared to level B. And then at level, and this page just tells you the other anchor standards that I mentioned that are cutting across all the test items. And then at level D, you can see there's a dramatic increase in the higher order reading skills and less in the reading comprehension skills. So this level D is intended to be, and is, high school level, and can be used for transitioning students into, well, for students who are actually in HSE, or used to be called GED prep, where they need to have a much more academic and rigorous content to prepare them to pass the high school equivalency or to go on to training or jobs that require more technical language and more rigorous skills. So I know that in the past some programs have only used up to level C in CASAS and transitioned to other tests for this transitional level. But we really now are sure that if you look at the content of this level D test, you will see that you can now keep going with CASAS on up the continuum of difficulty into high school level work. So again, both academic vocabulary and meaning from context, and it's only 20% of the basic level reading comprehension skills, even though the items are difficult. But it's what we're talking about here in terms of the cognitive processing. So you still have to have, really understand. It's demanding in terms of finding that information or detail or the main idea, because the text is harder and the question is asking you to navigate that more difficult text to find it. But the cognitive skill is still at a DOK1. And here at the higher order reading skills, we have the same categories. And also at level D, we have the R8 questions that ask the test taker to analyze claims and arguments. All right. So I'm going to go on to show you the test items. Let me just check if there are question. Can you opt out of vocabulary? No. Every student must take all the 40 items in the test, the entire test. All right, so I want to show you first and we have 10 more minutes. So let's see, I want to, and you can look at these online, but just to show you that there are 2 practice items for every level, and the practice items are geared to that level. So they are different for each level, but if you're giving the test to students at different levels in the same room, you still can do that, but the higher level students will not have difficulty understanding what to do for the most part. But the lower level students at level A and maybe B, you can focus more of your attention on to make sure that they understand the practice before they start the test. So these are the photo items that I was telling you about that are very simple. Those are also in the practice section. And then, this could be an actual item. It's a practice item, but a photo item with very simple distractors. As I said, life skills context still at level A with very simple locate information type practical questions. Here's a movie ad asking about how much something is, a recipe, email, So we have emails on all the test forms, and we have a text passage at the highest level of this level A. Going on to level B, you can see that the practice is a little harder, and but gives them the elements. You'll be able to see that it has the numbered lines in the text. It has the underlined words, so they can get familiar with those features. Then here we have a screen of a smartphone showing some, probably there's someone's calendar. So another community kind of announcement sign. Here's a resume. And this is, I want to show you that in the second question for this resume, this is where you can see that even with something as employment focused as a resume, we can still ask a question about the organization of the text. So the information is organized from, so how is it organized? So that's a R5, if you're familiar with the standards, kind of question about the text structure and how it's organized. Even you can use a resume to ask that. Here's a handwritten one with lines, landlord-tenant situation. Here you can see there's a question about vocabulary that has the underlined word, and in the text you can see that it is underlined. Yes, the test booklets are in color, and of course on the computer screen they are, but also the test booklets are in color. I'm going to go a little bit quickly. This is level C, and you can see that the display is something from an online website where you can order food, and has related questions. Then here's something about problem solving and how important that is to employers. And it's a little bit longer, but here we have the paragraphs numbered, and you can see that this is slightly longer. It might require some scrolling, but not too much. We've mostly tried to, and here we have a number of questions also about this text. We've tried to keep the text as, this is not a very long text, and you might not have to scroll on this. So we've tried to have the text be complex and as short as possible to be ever conscious of the time of the test, how long it takes to take the test. Writer's main purpose. So here's another vocabulary. Here's a two letters to the editor that have different points of view. And that addresses those R6 questions. Here's a question about the author's main point or their argument. Here's an email that's employment focused. And okay, and then we're going to quickly go to level D so you can see it. Let's get the practice. So here you can see this is a level D text, but it's short, but quite packed. And on a topic of interest to our learners, the writer distinguishes between leasing and buying by emphasizing. So what is the author's craft? How does he or she do that? Sometimes the target vocabulary, it can be a phrase or an idiom, or doesn't have to be just one word, which tends to make the best conclusion, so a kind of summary. Which argument does the writer use? So this is where I was saying that the analyzing the claims and looking at the how the writer supports their claim is included on this level. Here's something about the first day of the job, the first day on the job, and questions, 5 questions about this passage. Okay, and here's 2 pie charts. So we do have these kinds of displays, but also with some text in here, and some of the questions reference that text. And then here's another example with an editorial, and questions about the writer's different points of view. And here's a longer pro and con about the topic of, is the college to job path the best route? So that, I think, concludes the showing you the practice items. Let me see, are there any more questions? This would be a chance if you do have questions. Please go ahead. Is the font size adjustable? So yes, in eTests, one thing actually to be aware of is that by the end of June, if you're using eTests, you must convert to what's called HTML5. And in that new format, it's much easier to adjust the font size. And also, I'm so glad you gave me this opportunity. I really want to encourage you to use a touchscreen, whether it's a Chromebook or an iPad or a laptop with touchscreen, or even a regular computer to monitor that has touchscreen, because that way it's so much easier for the test taker to enlarge the font size or the display. So that's all possible in the eTest version, yes. And do the computer and print versions look the same? Yes, they do. Well, they do in a way that in the test booklet is the same format as you saw on these sample test items, but in the eTest version, the passage is on the left, and the question and the responses are in a strip on the right. So that's the same as it has been in the eTest. Any idea when the goals series will be ready to use? As I mentioned earlier, that would be, we don't know exactly, but we have submitted to the NRS, so it could be in a few months, it could be in half a year or longer. We just don't know. There's no telling exactly when we'll hear back on the results of that NRS review. Let's see. Are there any new prep materials? No, but I would say that we're starting to work with the publishers now on, as they come out with new materials that are aligned to the college and career readiness standards. We are working with them to align their materials, and then so those new materials will be coded to the new standards, and we'll have those available soon. It takes a little time. So let's see. So for now, you continue using Math 30 series along with goals reading until the math is ready. That's correct. And if you look in the beginning of the PowerPoint, you'll see slides about that. Are there grade equivalents? Yes. We are about to publish those on the website, so stay tuned. They will be there for sure. I know some of you need to use them for transition to CTE or for other purposes. So yes, they'll be available shortly. That was a question just to me, but I'll let everybody know. Any other questions? Pricing information is on the website. Let's see if I can quickly find it. If I go home, I'll show you where. Go home, and if you see it's under What's New, first thing, Order Reading Goals Test Booklet. Here, you click on here. Are the prices. So the test booklets are available. You can order them now, and the prices are here on the CASAS website. Any other questions? Do we begin this new test series next school year or use the 80? No, for ESL, you cannot use this series yet. So you can start if you like, and it depends, as I said earlier, on what your state is or your local program is asking you to do. But if you are permitted to start using this new test series now or in July, you may start using it for your high school equivalency or ABE students. And then you would keep using the 80 series for ESL until we hear back about the approval for the new series for ESL. All right, barring any other questions, thank you so much for attending. And if you do have questions, we'll keep the line open here a little while longer. If you want to enter anything more in the chat, please do. So, and of course, let us know if you have anything occurs to you and you have future questions, and we will be posting this on the website. So thank you all. So many of you are on, and we really appreciate that you could participate in this webinar. Thank you.